My name is Carly Lilly. I'm the owner of St. Breed Grill and Manlina Restaurants. I'm on the Sustainable Environment Commission for the City of Moscow. Here, I started the non-toxic Moscow movement about 8 months ago, and I've been going to the commission for about a year and a half, and I'm just a concerned citizen about the use of pesticides in the community. So I have made this sort of speech presentation, and I've been giving it where I've been asked when there's been interest. So I guess I'll just go ahead and jump right in. Our current system is one that is entirely dependent on thousands of chemical products designed specifically to snuff out different forms of life, beneficial or not. A pesticide doesn't care. Microorganisms, insects, animals, plants, any organism other than the desired crop are all deemed to be pests. Pesticides are designed life killers. They are biocides. I see the parents in this community taking actions every day in an attempt to raise healthy, disease-free children. From their purchasing decisions, cooking choices, diets, cleaning products, choice of pediatrician in school, and so on. These are choices that are being made carefully by mothers and fathers in Moscow, ultimately to promote the health and well-being of their families. But if we as a collective are expending all of this time and energy and all of these resources and hard-earned dollars, but we are doing it while living and playing in pesticides, with pesticide-treated parks grass, and if we are sending our kids to pesticide-treated schools, daycares, playgrounds, and sports fields, where they are running and tumbling and sliding and rolling and digging around in these biocides, we are working against ourselves, against them, and against all of our other efforts that would otherwise promote healthy, disease-free bodies. We want to be healthy, and we want our loved ones to be healthy. I would go so far as to say that healthy bodies and a safe place to grow and develop are a human right, and access to shared green spaces that won't poison us are a right. I think it is our responsibility to provide that space for our kids. And when we choose to treat the environments they spend so much of their time and that we've designed especially for them with pesticides, we are taking too big a risk with their health. So really quickly, so we know going forward, pesticide is the word used to describe a range of chemicals used to kill a variety of things. So there's the definition. These are the different categories of pesticides. Neonicotinoids is an insecticide you may have heard about recently in the news linked to colony collapse disorder in the honeybees that pollinate our food supply. Neonicotinoids also affect the same nicotinic receptor sites in the brains of humans as well. Herbicides, probably the biggest one of concern for today, are chemicals that kill plants. Herbicides kill plants in a variety of ways, but the most widely used herbicide in the world, glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, kills by corrupting the metabolic pathway of the plant and the enzymatic production that it needs to take up trace nutrients in the soil. You might be surprised to find out that this one right here has maybe the furthest reaching implications for human health. Why? Our gut bacteria, responsible for so many of the functions we need to thrive, have the same metabolic pathway as a dandelion. It is called the Shikimate pathway, and among other things, it's essential for a properly functioning immune system. When we disrupt that pathway in a plant, it dies. When we disrupt the pathway in the microorganisms that comprise our microbiome, they die. What then happens to us? So this is what we're currently using on the parks and playgrounds. And this is the list of chemicals that we're using everywhere else in town. So that's the Scholl Brothers invoice from 2016. And I haven't seen the 2017, but they're usually pretty similar. So here you can see the name of the pesticide, the active ingredient, and the percent is present in the formulation, the inert or unspecified, which we don't get to know because oftentimes they're proprietary trade secrets, and then the reason why we might be spraying the pesticide. So even if you don't use parks, you're still being exposed to all of these as you walk and live and breathe and move about town. One of the problems with inert ingredients is that they don't have to be safety tested. So the EPA only requires that the active ingredient is safety tested. And the active ingredient is safety tested in isolation. It's not tested in the formulation that it's in the proprietary formulation. So they safety test this, but they don't safety test it combined with everything else. This is a huge problem. For instance, one of the inert ingredients that we know about in Roundup is called polyethoxylated toluamine, or POEA. It's an inert ingredient that is more harmful than glyphosate to certain tissues. Researchers in France tested POEA at formulations at exposure levels equal to what is recommended we spray on lawns, and as low as 100,000 times lower. And they used placental lines, fresh umbilical cord lines, and what is the other cell that they used? Embryonic cells, because they multiply rapidly and respond really readily to chemicals. And they found cell death at the lawn concentration and cell damage at all concentrations for those cells, even as low as the 100,000 times lower. The problem is, the makers of these pesticides are the ones designing and performing the safety studies. It's not the EPA. You might have thought that's what the EPA does, but that's not what the EPA is. What the EPA does is they review the studies designed and performed by the manufacturers, and then based on the results in those studies, they analyze it and say, okay, well, yes, this is approved for industrial use or public use or whatever it is. So you can imagine how often the EPA is saying, well, Dow, DuPont, Bayer, Monsanto, according to the safety test study that you designed and performed, we're sure it was obvious to you at the time, as it's obvious to us, that your product is dangerous and entirely unfit for use around children, our food, and our pets. They don't say that. Thank you very much for your rigorous study, but your application for approval is denied. Doesn't happen. In fact, out of the 80,000 chemicals on the market today, the EPA has only ever banned 9. The last time they banned something was in 1990, and it was after an epic legal battle between the chemical manufacturer and the citizens of the towns they poisoned. They made a movie about it. It was called Erin Brockovich. The agency has not banned a single chemical under the Toxic Substance Control Act in the 3 decades since. And this brings up an important question. Why do we trust these companies to do what is in our best interest and not what's in their own? And do we truly trust that the regulatory agencies are functioning as they should? So here are the 9 that were banned. You can just take a look at them real quick. 78 PCBs, one in 78, another one in 78, dioxins, asbestos. Banned in 1989, reversed in 1991 after an industry lawsuit. Asbestos is the primary risk factor for mesothelioma, and while it's banned in 50 countries, the United States is not among them. Hexavalent chromium is the Erin Brockovich chemical, and then a mixture of nitrates at the bottom in 1984. So based on this, how often is the EPA prohibiting the sale of chemicals the manufacturer insists are safe? That often. Let's put this in perspective with other nations who ban pesticides. 1. A lot of these bans are in areas of agricultural activity where they've had examples of mass numbers of population succumbing to a specific sort of disease. So there's a lawsuit, a law made, and they ban the pesticide. But we have extremely strong lobbyists in our country, so it's harder for us to do those things. Now, the industry is not going to police itself. Think about the tobacco industry safety claims of old, or DuPont's Teflon product made with the harmful molecule C8, as well as C8's replacement, Gen X, which is currently poisoning thousands of North Carolinians. Takata airbags, the GM exploding ignitions, the Volkswagen emissions scandal, the now widely avoided endocrine-disrupting BPA in plastics and aluminum can linings. Consumer protections are not the business these companies are in. And our regulatory agencies aren't doing a good job of protecting us because they are underfunded, largely toothless because of lobbyist-promoted laws that favor the manufacturer, and corrupted by money in politics and the revolving managerial door between lobbyists, ex-corporate board executives, and the politicians at the helm. On top of that, it takes years of litigation and fighting to get these products removed from our environment. The ones who are focusing on our safety are nonprofits, consumer health and advocacy groups, research universities that are dedicated to human health and others like them, the ones that have no financial incentive one way or the other. They are leading the charge, not the EPA. So consider this the next time you see on a label the rubber stamp EPA approved. And what do the sales reps say about Roundup? They say it's safe as salt. DDT is good for me. And as our collective understanding of the human genome, our immune systems, the microorganisms that all life depends on, grows every day, there is no incentive for a company to continue to investigate its flagship safety stamped approved product with these advances in mind. So it really is up to us.